Liam had never imagined his life would turn out this way. He was a simple man, grounded, dependable, the kind of person who never asked for more than he could earn with his own two hands. He worked long hours at the local repair shop, coming home each night with oil-stained hands and tired eyes, but always with a smile for his daughters. That smile never reached his soul. Not anymore. He used to believe in fairy tales, real ones, built not on magic but on loyalty, effort, and shared dreams. That belief began the day he met Emily. She was radiant, full of charm, and had this unshakable belief that life was meant to be grand. Liam fell fast. He loved how she spoke about cities she'd never been to and places she wanted to escape to. At first, he believed they'd get there together, that their love would be the vehicle that carried them. They married young. Too young, perhaps. The kind of young that made you think love could conquer anything. And when Emily gave birth to twin girls, Sophie and Sadie, Liam thought their story had turned into a real-life fairytale. He built a nursery with his own hands, stayed up all night with crying babies, and took extra shifts to buy Emily small luxuries she'd once only dreamed of. He wasn't rich, not even close. But he gave everything he had, and then some. For a while, it was enough. Then things began to shift. Emily stopped smiling when he walked in. Her laughter faded. Her phone became her closest companion. She began staying out longer, dressing differently, investing in beauty treatments they couldn't afford. Liam noticed, but denial was warmer than confrontation. He didn't want to admit the woman he loved was slipping away. One night, he came home early. A storm had cut power at the shop, and for once, he wasn't exhausted. He thought maybe they could have dinner as a family. But when he walked through the door, the house was silent. The girls were asleep, the sitter gone. Emily wasn't home. He waited. Hours passed. No calls. No messages. When she finally came in, her heels clicked against the hardwood like accusations. She smelled of expensive perfume and red wine. He asked where she'd been, voice calm but shaking. She rolled her eyes, said she was with a friend. Didn't even try to lie well. He didn't sleep that night. The next day, he followed her. He hated himself for it, but something inside him needed truth more than peace. He stayed a block behind, heart pounding. She pulled up to a downtown hotel. Not a cheap one. She was met by a man in a suit. Liam watched as she kissed him without hesitation. He went home. Didn't cry. Just stayed at the wall. When she returned that night, he confronted her. She didn't deny it. She didn't even apologize. "I'm tired of pretending," she said coldly. "I married a man who promised dreams but brought home bills." She packed her things with no shame, tossed her ring on the kitchen table like it meant nothing. She walked out that night, heels echoing like gunshots in the silence of the home they built. She didn't ask about the girls. Not once. Liam filed for divorce the next day. He expected a fight, but she didn't contest custody. She wanted freedom. She wanted champagne and city lights, not early mornings and peanut butter sandwiches. The court gave him full custody. She walked away without a backward glance. The girls didn't understand. How could they? At 7, their world was bedtime stories and ponytails, not court papers and custody. They asked for their mom every night. And every night, Liam swallowed his anger and told them she loved them, even if she couldn't be there. He never let them see the bitterness he carried. They didn't deserve to carry the weight of their mother's choices. Money became tighter. He moved them to a smaller place, one bathroom, no backyard. He picked up extra shifts, sometimes falling asleep in the break room. He learned to braid their hair, to cook halfway decent meals, to be both father and mother. He sold his truck to pay off debts, bought a used car with a dent in the side and no heat. But they smiled. Despite everything, his daughters smiled. They still danced in the living room and made blanket forts. They still told him he was their hero, and that made it bearable. The town whispered. Small towns always do. People pitied him. Some admired him. Some said he should have seen it coming. But he didn't care what they thought. His focus was narrow. Keep the girls fed, keep the lights on, and keep going. There was no room left for anger, only survival. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and his daughters lay asleep, Liam would sit at the kitchen table and look at the empty chair across from him. He didn't miss Emily. He missed the idea of her, the version he'd loved, the one who used to smile when he walked in. That woman had died long before she left. There were nights he wished he could hate her. But the truth was, she gave him the only thing in his life worth living for. And for that, he couldn't bring himself to curse her name. He never dated again. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't trust himself. His judgment had once failed so deeply, he feared letting anyone close again. What if they hurt his girls? What if they left too? So he kept his head down, kept working, kept loving his daughters the only way he knew how, with everything he had left. His hands, once callous from fixing engines, learned to hold tea parties. His evenings were filled with school projects and bedtime stories. He didn't have much, but he had enough. Still, the exhaustion lingered. The kind that sits not in your body, but your soul. The kind that no amount of sleep could cure. He carried the weight of betrayal silently, buried under the day-to-day tasks of being everything to two little girls. Every now and then, he'd see Emily's photo in a tabloid or local gossip post, dripping in designer clothes, laughing in luxury. A new man on her arm, usually wealthier than the last. And for a moment, he'd feel that old sting of shame, as if her leaving had been a reflection of his failure. But it wasn't. She left because she wanted more than love. And Liam, though broken, still believed that love was enough, at least for the right person. One night, Sophie came to him with a drawing. It was a crane sketch of their family, just the three of them. She'd drawn Liam with a cape. When he asked why, she said, "Because you are a superhero." That was the moment something shifted. Not in the world, but in him. He realized he didn't need to be rich or perfect. He just needed to show up. Every day, without fail. And he did. Winter came hard that year. Snow fell like silence, heavy and endless. Bills piled up faster than he could pay them. He skipped meals so the girls could have theirs. Skipped jackets so they could be warm. He'd smile and tell them he wasn't cold. But at night, in the dark, the ache would settle deep in his bones. Still, he pushed through, because quitting wasn't an option. Liam had no idea that just beyond the harshest part of this winter, fate had something else waiting. Something that would test him in a way he'd never imagined. And in that test, buried in the ice and desperation, a spark would ignite. A spark that would draw the eyes of the world to a tired man with nothing left to give. But first, he had to survive. And he had to keep his girls safe, no matter what it cost. It had been weeks since Liam had a moment of peace. Between double shifts and grocery budgeting, his world was held together by fragile routines. Saturdays were reserved for the girls. He'd promised them small joys, pancakes, story time, and a trip to the neighborhood park. It was nothing fancy. Just snow-covered swings and a frozen lake that reflected the pale sky. But to Sophie and Sadie, it was a winter wonderland. He watched them closely, always cautious, always alert. There were bundles of joy wrapped in scarves and gloves, squealing with laughter as they chased each other. It was the first time in a long time that he felt something close to contentment. He didn't have much, but they were alive, smiling, and safe. Then it happened. It started with a toy. A little plastic unicorn Sophie had clung to all morning slipped from her mitten and skidded across the snow. It landed near the edge of the frozen lake. Before Liam could react, she ran after it, her boots kicking up powder as she reached out with both hands. Sadie followed, calling her sister's name. Liam's heart froze as the sound of cracking ice tore through the air. His feet moved before his brain caught up. He shouted, but they didn't hear him. Then came the splash. 2 small screams. Chaos. The cold hit like a hammer. He didn't hesitate. He lunged onto the ice, crawling toward the hole where both girls had gone under. The water was dark, frigid, pulling them down with terrifying force. He reached in, numb fingers grasping at nothing. Then, contact. He grabbed Sadie's jacket, yanked her up, then reached back down. Sophie wasn't there. He dove in without thinking. His lungs screamed. His body went into shock. But he kept going, kept searching, until finally, he found her. Her arm, her scarf, something. He grabbed it all and pushed upward with what little strength he had left. He didn't feel the pain, only urgency. A stranger appeared at the edge of the lake, pulling all 3 of them out. Liam collapsed, clinging to his girls. His vision blurred, his body trembled. Then, sirens. Then, blackness. When he woke up, the hospital ceiling came into view. A nurse's voice echoed gently in his ears, telling him his daughters were safe, recovering. Mild hypothermia, nothing permanent. He'd saved them. He didn't cry. Not until they climbed into his hospital bed later that night, whispering thank you against his chest. News spread fast. By morning, the local paper ran a piece. Single dad rescues daughters from frozen lake. Someone had filmed the rescue. It was blurry, frantic footage. Liam diving into the ice, pulling the girls out, collapsing with them in his arms. The video made its way online. People watched. People cried. Within hours, social media caught fire. Headlines range from heroic father risks life for twins to the real meaning of fatherhood. Messages poured in from strangers. Thousands shared their own stories of fathers, of sacrifice, of loss and survival. For a brief moment, Liam became a symbol. But he didn't care about that. He cared about Sophie and Sadie, who clung to him every night as if the world had nearly vanished beneath their feet. They spent 3 days in the hospital. On the 4th, the nurses wheeled them outside to meet Liam's ride. A borrowed car from a co-worker, heater barely working. The wind was sharp, and his jacket was still damp from the day before. He wrapped his daughters tight in blankets and promised them pancakes at home. Back in the tiny apartment, he dried their hair, gave them soup, and tried to forget how close he'd come to losing everything. But the world didn't forget. A few local journalists came by. He agreed to one short interview, awkward and uncomfortable. He wasn't interested in attention. He just wanted people to know the lake wasn't safe, to make sure no one else had to go through what he had. Then the letters started coming. Cards, drawings, gifts from strangers. People mailed blankets, children's books, and handwritten notes saying, "You reminded us what love looks like." There were offers too. One person offered to pay for their heating bill. Another wanted to donate to the girls' school fund. It overwhelmed him. He politely declined most of them. He didn't want charity. He wanted stability, respect, and to earn what he had. Still, he kept a showbox of letters tucked beneath his bed. Late at night, he'd read them when sleep wouldn't come. They reminded him he wasn't invisible anymore. Somewhere across the country, the video reached a woman named Ava. She watched it late at night, wine glass in hand, muted television flickering in the background. She recognized the girls instantly. The twins, Sophie and Sadie, her cousin Emily's children. She hadn't seen them in years, not since Emily's wedding. She distanced herself after the divorce. Ava had never liked Emily's choices, especially how she abandoned her family for material gain. But watching Liam throw himself into a frozen lake, without hesitation, something shifted. She remembered him, quiet, kind, a man who smiled at Emily like she was his entire world. She remembered the way he held the girls at the wedding, one in each arm, whispering to them between toasts. And now, seeing him risk his life for them, everything she'd assumed about him came back with clarity. This wasn't just a viral video. This was fate tapping her on the shoulder. 3 days later, Liam got a call. A woman named Ava, from a wellness company based 2 cities over, said she wanted to meet. She didn't give much detail, only that she had a personal connection and an opportunity. He was skeptical. He didn't have time for promises or sales pitches. But something in her voice made him pause. It was steady, calm, sincere. He agreed. That morning, he dressed the girls in their cleanest clothes, brushed their hair extra carefully, and waited outside their building. The sun hadn't fully risen when they heard it. Engines. Not one, but several. Black luxury SUVs rolled up one by one, polished and silent, like shadows gliding through snow. People stared. Neighbors gathered. Liam stood confused, gripping his daughter's hands. Then the doors opened. From the lead vehicle, Ava stepped out. Tall, graceful, and composed. She walked straight to Liam, introduced herself softly, then bent down to greet the girls by name. Her eyes watered when they hugged her without hesitation. She told Liam she'd seen the video, that she knew who he was, that she hadn't spoken to Emily in years but had followed their story from a distance, heartbroken at how it unfolded. She said watching him save his daughters had shaken something inside her, that she couldn't stand by any longer. He was speechless. She didn't stop there. She explained that her company ran a foundation for families who'd endured trauma, that she wanted to offer the girls full scholarships to an elite private school, that she'd found a home, already furnished, rent-free for a year, near a safer part of town, that she needed someone trustworthy to manage logistics at one of her warehouses. A job. A life. Liam didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to reject it all. Pride screamed in his ear. But his daughters looked up at him with eyes full of hope. He saw what this could mean. Not for him. For them. He shook Ava's hand. That night, in their new temporary home, the girls curled up on the couch, wrapped in soft blankets. There was heat, space, a stocked fridge. Liam sat silently, watching them sleep, overwhelmed. He'd never imagined such a turn. But not everyone welcomed. Liam didn't sleep much that night. Not because he was worried, but because for the first time in years, his thoughts weren't heavy with dread. They were uncertain, yes, but not bleak. He sat near the window of the new home, watching snowflakes drift lazily past the glass. The silence around him felt less like loneliness, more like peace. He started the warehouse job the following week. The transition was awkward at first. He wasn't used to being noticed. The staff knew who he was, the viral dad, the man who jumped into a frozen lake. Some stayed. Others offered warm handshakes and quiet nods of respect. He didn't brag, didn't elaborate, just worked hard, the way he always had. Ava visited often. At first, it was under the pretense of business. She said she needed to oversee the new regional program personally. But soon, it was clear there was more to it. She'd linger after meetings, ask about the girls, bring books and snacks she claimed were extras from the office. They'd share coffee in the break room, talk about small things. He told her about his love for woodworking, about the treehouse he once tried to build. She told him about her teenage years, how she ran from her past and buried herself in success. They didn't flirt. Not at first. There was too much at stake. But their conversations stretched longer each day. The silences between them grew softer, more comfortable. He didn't trust it. He liked her. That much he couldn't deny. But he didn't understand what someone like her would want with someone like him. She ran a company. He ran lunchboxes to school. She wore heels and drove luxury cars. He still didn't own a coat without a patch on the elbow. But Ava saw more. One night, as they sat in the living room, Sadie asleep on his lap, Sophie curled at his side, Ava looked at him with something that wasn't pity. It was admiration. Quiet, unshaken admiration. I used to think strength looked like power, she said softly, but I was wrong. It looks like this. Liam didn't respond. He didn't need to. Something passed between them in that moment. Something unspoken but solid. Still, he kept his guard up, not just for his sake, but for his daughters. They adored Ava. She'd become a constant in their world. School pickups, weekend trips to the bookstore, late-night cocoa with tiny marshmallows. It terrified him how quickly they'd grown attached. Then came the news about Emily. She'd moved in with a wealthy investor 3 states away. Their relationship crumbled just as fast as it began. Her reputation, once enviable, began to fray under gossip and scandal. The same social circles that once adored her now whispered about her mistakes. Liam didn't feel satisfaction, only distance. The girls asked fewer questions about her. One night, Sadie said, "I don't think Mommy misses us anymore." Liam hugged her tighter and said, "Maybe, but I miss you enough for both of us." Work at the warehouse improved. Liam was promoted within 2 months. Ava claimed it was merit. He believed her. He stayed late some nights, not because he had to, but because building something again felt good. He hadn't realized how much of himself he'd buried beneath survival. Now, parts of him were waking up. He started fixing furniture in his garage. Bought scrap wood, sanded it down, crafted small things, shelves, toy chests, even a pair of wooden dolls for the girls. Word spread. Neighbors asked for custom pieces. Ava suggested a small online store. He hesitated, then agreed. It became more than a hobby. It became pride. One weekend, she invited him and the girls to a cabin her family owned in the mountains. It was nothing extravagant, simple, warm, tucked into a grove of pines. They spent the days sledding, drinking cider, and telling stories by the fire. It was the closest thing to a family vacation they'd ever known. That night, after the girls had fallen asleep in the loft, Ava and Liam sat by the fire. The only sound was the crackle of logs and the occasional howl of distant wind. He looked at her, searching her face for the one question he hadn't had the courage to ask. Why me? She didn't flinch. Because you showed me what real love looks like, and I hadn't seen that in a long time. He said nothing, just stared at the flames, unsure what to do with the feelings rising in his chest. But Ava didn't push. She never did. Instead, she gave him space to come to his own decisions. Days passed. Weeks. Their lives settled into a rhythm. The girls thrived at their new school. They made friends, joined a dance class. Sophie brought home a certificate for kindness. Sadie started writing poems. Liam found joy in the smallest things. Mismatched socks on school mornings. Ava's laugh echoing through the kitchen. The way the girls beamed when he walked into a room. One afternoon, while sanding a bookshelf, he realized he was no longer surviving. He was living. And part of that life, whether he was ready to admit it or not, was Ava. She never asked for a label. Never demanded clarity, but the space between them had shrunk. They spent most evenings together, sometimes talking, sometimes just being in the same room. Her presence no longer felt like a guest. It felt like home. Then came the gala. It was a charity event hosted by Ava's company, and she insisted he come. At first, he refused, said he didn't belong in rooms full of CEOs and fashion photographers. But she looked at him, calm and steady, and said, "You belong wherever you stand." So he went. He wore a borrowed suit. His tie was crooked, his shoes a little scuffed. But when he entered the ballroom, heads turned. Not because of his clothes, but because he walked in with Ava, and she looked at him like he was the most important man in the room. He stayed quiet, polite, and a little out of place, until a woman approached. She'd seen the lake video, asked to take a photo with him. Then another, and another. People thanked him, praised his bravery, and he realized maybe he didn't belong to the world of luxury, but he belonged in the story, in his own story. Later that night, Ava found him outside, alone under the stars. "Why do you still hesitate?" she asked. He answered honestly, "Because I'm scared of needing someone again, of letting my girls need someone. What if it ends? What if it hurts?" She took his hand. "Then we'll hurt together. But we won't leave." That was the moment he allowed himself to believe it. Not in magic, not in fairy tales, but in healing, in second chances. He kissed her, not because he wanted to own her, or because he felt he should, but because everything inside him finally said, "You allowed." After that night, they didn't need to talk about what they were. The girls already knew. They didn't ask for permission. They just started calling her Auntie Ava like it had always been that way. Their drawings included her now. 4 stick figures, not 3. Life didn't become perfect. There were still bills, still long days. But it became fuller, softer, real. And through it all, Liam carried a quiet gratitude. Not for the fame, or the offers, or even the SUVs that had once lined his street, but for the woman who saw him when he was invisible. And for the daughters who gave him a reason to keep walking when the world tried to freeze him in place. Liam didn't measure time the way most people did anymore. Not by weeks or months, but by moments, the kind that passed without fanfare yet changed everything. A lunchbox forgotten on the counter. A quiet thank you from one of the girls after homework. Ava's hand reaching for his in the car without saying a word. These were the markers now. Subtle shifts that stitched a life together. It had been a year since the lake. A year since his entire world had hung on the edge of a frozen surface. A year since strangers became supporters and a woman from the past became the hope he never expected. The house felt different now, not just because it was cleaner or better furnished. It was lived in. The fridge had magnets. The floors carried small scuff from dance shoes, and the hallways smelled like cinnamon more often than not. There were messes, paint spilled in the garage, Ava's coffee mugs left in every room, crayon drawings on the walls, but none of it felt like disorder. It felt like presence. Liam's woodworking side business had grown quietly. Orders came in regularly now. Word of mouth carried his name into places he never expected. Teachers, therapists, even a boutique that wanted exclusive pieces for children's rooms. It was never about money. It was about making something with his hands that others valued. Every shelf, every carved name, was proof he had rebuilt. The girls thrived in school. Sadie had become the confident one, bold and unapologetically curious. Sophie was softer, more careful, always asking questions with wide, searching eyes. Together, they were his pulse. The reason every decision mattered. Ava stayed. Not by accident. Not by default. She chose to be there every day, even when it wasn't easy. She didn't come to save them. She came to grow with them. And Liam, despite all his guarded instincts, allowed her in fully. But just as life steadied, the past surfaced again, uninvited and sharp. Emily returned. She didn't call, didn't send a message. She simply appeared at the school one afternoon, claiming she wanted to pick up the girls. The front office, unaware of the deeper context, called Liam in confusion. By the time he arrived, Emily was sitting in the waiting area, dressed in sleek black, sunglasses perched on her head like she was on her way to lunch, not facing the man whose life she'd fractured. She smiled like nothing had changed. He didn't argue in front of the staff. Instead, he asked to speak privately. They walked outside, and for the first time in over a year, they stood face to face. No lawyers, no judges, no cold documents between them. She said she missed the girls, said she wanted to be involved again, that her life had clarified. She dropped buzzwords like co-parenting and fresh start. But there was a hollowness to her words, a faint desperation hiding behind charm. Her eyes scanned his clothes, his truck keys, the faint traces of sawdust on his shirt, and something flickered, envy, maybe, or regret. Liam asked her one question. Why now? She didn't answer directly. She mentioned the video, the articles, the miraculous comeback. She said people were talking, that she'd made mistakes, but she'd paid for them, and she deserved another chance. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply said, "You left. Not just me. Them. And now you want a shortcut back into a story you abandoned." She didn't argue that, but she didn't accept it either. She filed for partial custody 3 days later. The notice hit like ice water. Liam sat at the kitchen table, paper in hand, heart pounding. He thought they were past this. That time had closed that door for good. But now the threat hovered again. Someone who had walked away trying to reclaim a place they no longer fit. Ava read the documents silently, then placed them down and said, "We'll fight it." Liam didn't want to fight. He didn't want courtrooms or accusations or witnesses dragged back into the light. But for his daughters, he would walk through fire again. The hearing was set for 6 weeks out. He gathered everything: records, letters from teachers, statements from neighbors, even a notarized note from Ava detailing her role in the children's lives. It wasn't just about legal angles. It was about telling the truth without spectacle. Meanwhile, Emily's presence unsettled the girls. Sophie withdrew a little. Sadie became short-tempered. They asked questions Liam had no easy answers for. Why is Mommy back now? Does she want to take us away? Are we going to live in 2 houses again? He reassured them gently. Honestly, he said, no one is taking you anywhere. You are home, and I will never stop fighting for you. The day of the hearing, snow fell again, light, harmless. The courtroom was small, quiet, with muted colors and ticking clocks. Emily wore a tailored suit. Her lawyer spoke confidently. They presented a narrative of redemption, of intention, of a woman wronged by her own past choices now seeking to repair them. Liam didn't argue with that version. He let the facts speak. He read a short statement. No theatrics, no dramatics. He said he wasn't a perfect father, but he had never left. That he hadn't earned his children's trust with money or gifts, but with presence. That he didn't keep them happy every day, but he kept them safe, warm, and heard. Then Ava stood. She wasn't required to, but she asked to speak. She told the court not about sacrifice or suffering, but about consistency. That love isn't proven in crisis, It's proven in the small, repeated actions no one films or praises. That the girls needed more than a biological connection. They needed stability, safety, and truth. The ruling came 3 days later. Emily was granted visitation rights under supervision, limited and reviewed quarterly. She didn't take it well. She made a scene outside the courthouse, calling the system broken, blaming everyone but herself. The news didn't cover it. No one filmed this time. No public redemption arc awaited her. She disappeared again. And this time, Liam didn't look back. The months that followed were quiet again. Ava moved in officially. There was no grand announcement. She just never left. And one day, there were 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom, her book stacked on the nightstand, her coffee always brewed before his alarm. The girls stopped calling her Auntie Ava. They called her home. Liam asked her to marry him on a Sunday morning while pouring syrup over pancakes. No ring yet. No speech. Just a question and a soft smile. She said yes with a kiss that tasted like cinnamon and forever. The wedding was small. Backyard, fairy lights, handwritten vows. No viral videos. No photographers. Just love, quiet and unshaken. And when Liam stood holding Ava's hands, the girls beside them in matching dresses, he didn't think about the lake, or the cold, or the dark years that nearly broke him. He thought about what he had built. Not a perfect life, but a true one. Because infidelity didn't destroy him. It revealed him. And in that revelation, he found more than survival. He found love. He found family. He found a second chance. And this time, he didn't let go.